There exists a strength that prefers silence. It refrains from boasting. It avoids the spotlight. It doesn't crave recognition. It remains steadfast, calm, and unwavering. This power doesn't shout for attention. Rather, it renders the need for attention meaningless. This is a concept that eludes many. True strength is often silent. Genuine focus does not make grand declarations. Authentic transformation begins not amidst clamor, but in serene stillness. We inhabit a society fixated on visibility, where thoughts, ambitions, and even healing are shared instantaneously. Progress is evaluated by its visibility rather than its depth. The Stoics, however, understood the significance of quiet growth. They realized that what flourishes in silence endures longer. Actions taken without the need for applause bear greater significance. They adhered to a philosophy that favored authenticity over performance, emphasizing not just being present physically, but being present within oneself. This journey is not about becoming distant or emotionless. It's about establishing inner harmony in a world fixated on external validation. It's about reclaiming your energy, safeguarding your focus, and opting for intentional living over performance. To act based on principles, not on impulses. To discover tranquility in anonymity and strength in restraint. The Stoic seeks clarity over recognition. They do not need to voice their thoughts. They simply act. When your actions align with your values, your words become optional. And when your mind is calm and centered, distractions fade away. So, if you're ready to stop merely performing and start embodying, if you're weary of the noise and crave clarity, these 12 Stoic principles will guide you in creating a power that quietly emerges. In a world that equates worth with outward visibility, embracing silence may seem almost revolutionary, but it's not escapism. It's a return to depth, focus, and self. For while noise captures attention, silence fosters substance. What you cultivate in silence will always surpass what is merely built for accolades. The Stoics recognized this truth deeply. Their silence was not born of a lack of words, but rather from a mastery over them. They chose not to squander their speech on what did not uphold their principles. They understood that genuine power develops in obscurity, away from the spotlight. We often talk excessively. We clarify, overshare, and to justify our thoughts before we've fully engaged with them. We proclaim goals instead of building them. We rant rather than reflect. The real issue isn't our talking, but our timing. Speaking too soon gives a false impression of progress, tricking our minds into believing we've accomplished more than we have. Nothing stunts growth faster than confusing performance with genuine purpose. Let's be frank, silence makes many feel uneasy. It exposes what we've been sidestepping: indecision, anxiety, uncertainty. It creates a space where excuses cannot hide amidst noise. But that discomfort is essential. It's where your foundation is laid. Choosing silence signifies intention. You're indicating that you don't need to justify your path yet. You wish to embody it first. Silence is where roots develop. Consider like nurturing a tree. If you uproot it daily to show others its progress, it'll never take hold. Authentic growth occurs underground, where no one claps, checks in, or celebrates, yet remains very real. That's why Stoics structured their lives as temples, slowly, quietly, steadily. Each value, each principle, each habit is another stone laid in silence. And here's what happens when silence underpins your foundations. Your actions no longer require justification. Your presence resonates before you even speak. You navigate the world with a stillness that may unsettle others, not due to coldness, but due to clarity. You've no need to rush to be understood. You're too occupied with understanding yourself. But let's clarify. Silence does not equate to an action. It's not passivity. It's focused restraint. It's clearing away the noise so that the signal can grow stronger. It's the realm where true commitment is forged. And in a world rife with distractions, Choosing silence becomes an act of rebellion, the first step toward mastery. Ask yourself, am I creating in silence, or merely talking loudly about unfulfilled intentions? Am I laying the groundwork, or just narrating the blueprint? A house that hopes for attention may fall early, but a house built in silence, it stands firm. Second, speak less, act more. There's a pitfall that snares even the best intentions. Discussing intentions instead of executing them. It's subtle. You share your plans with a friend. You post goals online. You craft a caption with ideal lighting and an inspiring quote. In that instant, your brain feels satisfied as if you've made progress. But you haven't. You've only borrowed the sensation of forward movement without realizing any tangible results. That's the peril of premature disclosure. It provides a reward without the corresponding effort. The Stoics grasped this notion deeply. They didn't merely speak of discipline. They lived it. They didn't proclaim their virtues. They honed them in quietude, in the background of life's stage where no one applauded. Epictetus advised that if you wish to be a philosopher, act like one. Not just sound wise or persuade others of your potential, but embody the identity through consistent actions, through tangible proof. And that encapsulates this principle. Stop performing your growth. Start becoming it. Reflect on the contrast between someone who continually talks about their plans and someone who simply takes action. One fills the air with intentions. The other builds in silence. One seeks validation. The other seeks results. It's always the latter who endures, not due to their superiority, but because their energy is directed inward, toward effort rather than outward, toward spectacle. Discussing your ambitions isn't inherently negative, but doing so too frequently or prematurely can backfire. It releases the internal pressure that propels you forward and opens you to external doubt before you've built the necessary strength to withstand it. This is why the Stoic path is directed inward. It's not about secrecy, it's about stability. The deeper your roots go, the less you feel the need to prove anything. The more you act, the less you need to elucidate. Let's make this practical. If you intend to get fit, the average person shares a gym selfie before putting in the work. The Stoic, they show up day after day, silently committed. Want to establish a business? The average person talks about ideas, shares motivational posts, perhaps even launches prematurely. The Stoic, they study, prepare, execute quietly, and let the outcomes speak for themselves down the road. This is not merely preference, it's a strategy, because momentum flourishes in quietude, not in the spotlight. This doesn't mean you retreat out of fear or false humility. It means you safeguard the sacred energy of becoming. You allow your efforts to mature in the darkness, away from external praise or skepticism. You cease to broadcast potential and begin to shape it through your daily actions. And here's what occurs when you talk less and achieve more. You become undeniable, not because you've convinced anyone, but because your outcomes speak for themselves. You cultivate a different kind of presence, not loud but substantial. People sense it in how you operate, how you decide, and how you no longer need to explain who you are. Your work has already done that for you. So, consider where you might be expending energy through speech. Where do you narrate a story you haven't yet realized? What if you simply close the door, focused, and work persistently, quietly without ceasing? In the end, those who bear the true weight are those who don't feel driven to discuss it. Third, don't share the seed, nurture it. Every concept, every aim, every aspiration you harbor is akin to a seed. Fragile at first, in need of nurturing, protection, and time. Yet most individuals fail to let their seeds germinate because they expose them prematurely. They proclaim, flaunt, and discuss what they hope to achieve before giving it the chance to materialize. In doing so, they deprive it of its most crucial phase, the quiet, unseen growth. The Stoics recognized the hazards of premature exposure. They didn't showcase their intentions. They shielded them, nurturing them in solitude. They understood a profound truth regarding life and nature. Roots form in silence, Real strength forms in silence, and lasting growth begins in the dark. Picture a gardener who plants a seed and then digs it up daily for others to see how it's progressing. What happens? The seed perishes, not due to a lack of potential, but from a lack of privacy. Your goals are similar. They don't require validation during their nascent stages. They need focus. They require time to evolve into something tangible before being subjected to noise, opinions, and judgment. The temptation to share your seed is understandable. It cultivates a semblance of accountability, visibility, perhaps admiration. Yet that admiration can misfire. It satiates your ego prematurely. You gain the emotional satisfaction of achievement before actualizing it, which diminishes your drive. It creates the illusion that you're closer to the outcome than reality suggests. And worst of all, it exposes your ambitions to skepticism before your self-belief is robust enough to endure it. That's why the Stoic keeps their ambitions hidden in the beginning, not from fear, but out of respect. Respect for the process. Respect for the delicate nature of early growth. They don't need to announce their habits. They don't feel compelled to explain their goals. They simply nurture them quietly, each day, in the shadows. Let's translate this into real life. If you want to start a business, there's no need to trumpet your intentions to 100 people on day one. You need to study your craft, devise a plan, take tangible steps. If you're aiming to improve your health, refrain from publicizing your workout schedule. Just train, eat healthily, rest, repeat. Then, one day, someone notices you, stronger, more grounded, focused, and asks, "What changed?" You'll smile, knowing all this unfolded long before they even recognized it. This principle doesn't advocate for secrecy. It emphasizes respecting the natural growth cycle. A tree doesn't bloom overnight. A structure doesn't rise without a blueprint. A character worth an audience isn't shaped publicly. It's molded in silence, through choices made without applause, without spectators, and when the only witness is your own soul. So reflect on what seeds you've prematurely revealed. What would transpire if you ceased explaining and prioritized nurturing? Are you trying to reap rewards before your roots have truly grown? When the roots are solidly entrenched, when they've had ample time to prosper peacefully, there is no fear of the winds, no need to justify the journey, and no obligation to prove anything. Your work will proclaim itself when it's ready. Until that moment, safeguard the seed. While validation can be gratifying, it can also subtly undermine your discipline. Every like, comment, or compliment offers fleeting satisfaction to the ego before your soul has truly earned anything substantial. The more you depend on external acknowledgement, the more you train your mind to seek it. Over time, you cease to act from purpose and instead perform for responses. You risk becoming addicted to recognition rather than working to become someone worthy of being noticed. The Stoics cautioned against this craving for praise since it weakens you, not audibly, but in a subtle and unnoticed manner. You might find you require external feedback to remain motivated. You measure success not through inner alignment, but by outside applause. You lose touch with the most profound reward, the quiet peace that comes from recognizing you are on your path, undertaking your work, regardless of who notices. Consider how frequently we disrupt our processes just to capture a fleeting moment of validation. You're engaged in something significant, yet you pause to share, not because it's complete or ready, but simply to experience a rush of attention. In doing so, you fracture your focus, dilute your drive, and relinquish the sacred privacy necessary for true growth. This is not to imply that recognition is inherently negative. It's a human desire. However, the Stoic does not rely on being seen, and therein lies the distinction. They cultivate their minds to derive satisfaction from the work itself, detaching the actions from their results. The journey itself is the reward. Anything beyond that is merely a bonus, not a fuel source. Let's look at this pragmatically. You've been steadfast in your habits, quietly advancing yourself. Then someone acknowledges your efforts, and you feel uplifted. But here's the catch. Suddenly you start to anticipate the applause. And when the compliments cease, so does your consistency. Why? Because your discipline wasn't founded on your internal motivations. It was borrowed from external approval. To cultivate true inner strength, a detox from this dependency is essential. You must starve the desire to be seen. You need to find joy in committing to the process, not in receiving accolades. You must persist when no praises are sung. Let that silence signal that you're finally engaging for the right reasons. This doesn't involve isolating yourself or living disconnected from others. It means grounding your motivation within. It requires creating without the anticipation of attention, training without the necessity of accolade, healing without seeking pity, constructing with such alignment that even in silence, you continue to rise. So ponder, am I engaged in this for the purpose of being recognized, or because it's the right thing to do? Could I persist even if no one expressed gratitude, acknowledge my efforts, or even notice my endeavors? Because while validation can be sweet, it is ultimately hollow. When you train your mindset to appreciate the work itself rather than the reactions to it, you become unyielding. Applause may fade, but quiet progress resonates for a lifetime. At some juncture, you must determine, am I pursuing this to be visible or to be solid? This difference is monumental. One is rooted in ego, the desire to impress, to be admired, to attain validation. The other is grounded in integrity, the commitment to growth, even when no one observes, even when it seems insignificant. And there lies an undeniable truth. The moment you begin working for recognition, you've lost your direction. The Stoics articulated this with sharp clarity. They taught that virtue must exist for its own sake. A good deed loses its purity once it is performed for accolades. Marcus Aurelius consistently reminded himself not to construct an idealized version of who he was becoming, but to humbly become it through consistent actions, through unglamorous labor that required no audience. Yet today, almost everything is performance-oriented. Every good deed is accompanied by a post. Every transformation demands a caption. Every moment of growth, focus, or success becomes content. Slowly, without realization, we start living not for our internal alignment, but for others' attention. Herein lies the risk. When your work devolves into performance, you become reliant on external validation. When a crowd cheers, your motivation remains. When they don't, you question everything. That's when your consistency falters and your purpose diminishes, not due to a lack of capability, but because your motivation was never genuine. Real growth doesn't require visibility. Authentic healing doesn't need to be shared. Genuine transformation often occurs quietly, sometimes awkwardly, without any spotlight. Suppose you're helping others, mentoring, guiding, supporting. If you're doing this to be seen as wise or thoughtful, what happens when your efforts aren't acknowledged? You'll burn out and grow resentful. But if you undertake these actions because they resonate with your soul, then the outcome becomes irrelevant. You engage because it's the right course of action, not for potential rewards. Or consider your journey of learning, reading, and the self-improvement. If your motivation is to appear knowledgeable, you'll shy away from risk. You'll speak only when confident it will sound intelligent. But if you are driven by a pursuit of truth and a genuine commitment to wisdom, you'll embrace awkward moments, the silences, the slow process of mastery. Your pursuit will be rooted in something deeper than performance. It will be centered on your journey of becoming. This doesn't imply you can't share your experiences, but you must be mindful of your intentions. Why am I sharing this? To serve or seek accolades. The ego can slyly turn even noble actions into mere performance if you're not careful. The Stoic response: return. Return to your intentions. Return to quiet. Allow your actions to speak. Let your habits overshadow your words. Redefine your results as your voice, not merely a strategy for marketing yourself. The moment you liberate yourself from the need to impress, you become genuinely authentic. So, ask yourself, if no one were observing my actions, would I still persist in them? If there was no applause, no acknowledgement, no feedback, would I still choose this path? Because when you transition from seeking to be seen to pursuing alignment, that's when everything shifts. That's when the noise diminishes and true power emerges. Seventh, center your discipline in solitude. Real discipline isn't fashioned in loudness. It's cultivated in quietness. Not amidst the rush of praise or the weight of deadlines, but in the still moments when no one's observing you. No accountability partner, no audience, no accolades, just you. And the question becomes, will I follow through on my commitments even without recognition? That's the core of authentic discipline. In solitude, where excuses can roar the loudest, you choose to act regardless. We've been conditioned to link discipline with external structures, alarms, routines, reminders, and workout partners. While these elements can assist, they merely serve as scaffolding. The Stoics recognized that the most dependable discipline springs from within. Epictetus, even in a state of poverty, with no luxury or ease, became one of the clearest voices in philosophical discipline because he refined his mind in solitude, facing hardships without distractions. Solitude exposes your excuses. It reveals your true commitment level. No one to impress, no one to disappoint. Just you and your word. And here lies the honesty. In that space, self-deception is impossible. You either act or you don't. This unforgiving honesty is a gift, compelling you to develop strength from within. Consider those early mornings. When the alarm rings, it's still dark. No one is watching. No one will know if you choose to remain in bed. That moment is sacred because your response, when no one else is around, shapes who you are when they are. Imagine honing your skills, whether writing, building, or improving your health, absent deadlines, pressures, or audiences, just your own standards and desires. That's where the disciplined diverge from the distracted. Solitude might feel daunting. It might resurrect voices you've avoided, fear, doubt, and hesitation. But these voices aren't adversaries. They're signals, invitations. When you meet them with stillness rather than distraction, you start to gain self-awareness. You begin to hone your focus. You convert your mind from a battleground into a fortress. Modern society despises solitude. Every quiet moment is met with screens, distractions, and noise. If you desire genuine power from within, you must reclaim that tranquility. You need to safeguard it. Carve out time where it's just you and your work. No commentary, no broadcasting, just presence. When you anchor your discipline in solitude, it becomes distinctly yours. Not borrowed from a system, nor relying on motivation, but something unwavering, rooted in your values, your vision, your commitments. So, reflect. When was the last time I practiced discipline without seeking outside rewards? Do I depend on pressure to remain consistent, or have I created a rhythm that holds in silence? Who am I when it's just me and the work? Because that version of you, self-reliant, steadfast, silently dedicated, is the one who doesn't just do the work, they embody it. And once your discipline is rooted in solitude, it cannot be taken from you. Now, let's discuss detaching from praise. Praise is enticing. It provides a sense of validation. It feels like progress, a signal you're on the right path. But if you're not careful, it turns into a chain, a subtle one that might only be recognized when you falter. When your efforts hinge on recognition, you surrender your power. You cease acting from principle and start performing for admiration. The moment that admiration wanes, so does your consistency. The Stoics were acutely aware of this danger. They warned against forming an addiction to others' opinions. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that fame is mere distracting noise. What truly matters is doing what's right, regardless of external recognition or agreement. Praise, while gratifying, is fleeting. It shifts with moods, trends, and personal biases. One day you're celebrated, the next you're overlooked. If your motivation fluctuates in tandem with applause, you'll never lay the foundation for something enduring. Let's be real. We all seek acknowledgement. It's part of being human, but discipline doesn't mean denying your emotions. It's about mastering them. choosing not to be swayed by them, because once you find yourself needing praise to keep progressing, you lose the ability to access your own drive. You cease doing things for their intrinsic value and begin to chase fleeting hits of approval, reactions, and applause. Your sense of purpose begins to wane, becoming less about your principles and more about what others might find impressive. Visualize this. If your effort ceases the moment it goes unnoticed, that it was never truly rooted in your intentions. It was borrowed from another's attention. That's not discipline. That's dependency. Now consider the opposite scenario. You rise, you train, you work, you create, all without any posts, announcements, or acknowledgments. Just consistent repetition, just internal standards, just self-respect. That kind of effort doesn't need an audience. It yields results that speak for themselves when it's crucial. The most resilient individuals you encounter have shown up in silence for years. Unlike waiting for applause, they cultivated the discipline of purpose and clarity without anyone watching. That's what renders them unshakable. Not praise, but their detachment from it. How do you cultivate this mentality? You practice letting praise drift past you like a breeze. You accept it without making it necessary. You say thank you and return to your activities. You remind yourself daily, I'm not here to impress. I'm here to be true. Above all, observe your own responses. If you feel your energy wane when you aren't recognized, pause. Don't be hard on yourself, but recalibrate and realign. Your worth lies not in being seen, but in being consistent when unseen. So ask yourself, would I continue showing up in this way without praise? Would I still train, write, serve, or grow if no one noticed? Because when the answer is yes, you've transitioned from noise to strength, from performing to becoming. And that level of power is neither loud nor within reach of others. Next, allow your results to be your voice. You needn't announce what you're crafting. You aren't required to validate your importance through speeches, status updates, or finely tuned pronouncements. If your efforts are genuine, rooted in clarity, aligned with purpose, and supported by discipline, your outcomes will resonate on your behalf, loudly, quietly, and undeniably. This embodies the Stoic principle. Let your actions speak for themselves. Marcus Aurelius sequestered progress updates about his value from the public sphere. He chose to live them. He wrote privately, acted quietly, and left a legacy not because he flaunted it, but because he genuinely embodied it. This is the crux of the matter. Those who seek applause are often the loudest, whereas those who build realize that their work speaks for itself. Consider, when someone truly evolves, do they need a detailed explanation? You sense it within their presence, energy, and consistency. There's no campaign required, no announcements, merely sustained evidence. Their outcomes enter the room long before they do, transforming everything. This isn't about pride, it's about direction. When you expend energy attempting to be understood, trying to convince others of your endeavors, you dilute your power. Your focus diverges from the art of building to that of branding, from integrity to image. That shift, no matter how minor, will inevitably derail you because it converts your efforts into performance instead of purpose. Let's face it, the urge to justify your actions can be intense, especially when you're evolving in ways others can't fully comprehend, especially when you break the molds others still inhabit. However, rationalizing your growth to those unprepared to hear, it is akin to shouting into a void. It shifts nothing and drains your energy in the process. The Stoic approach: do not explain. Instead, build stronger boundaries, healthier habits, and build greater focus. And allow those elements to do the talking, not through noise, but through substance. Let your presence, calm, grounded, and consistent, be your proof. Consider the builder who lays bricks each day without uttering a single word. One day, a solid house stands in her wake, tangible and real. That's what your discipline accomplishes over time. It creates undeniable outcomes. No one needs convincing. And even more importantly, you're devoid of doubt because you recognize what silence, effort, and patience can forge. If you feel the urge to justify or broadcast your efforts, pause. Remind yourself that the most potent words are the ones left unsaid. Allow your nourishment of fitness to flow through your energy. Let your journey of learning manifest through your wisdom. Permit your healing to shine through your tranquility. Let your outcomes re-enter the room, signaling everything on their own behalf. Now reflect. Am I building or simply broadcasting? Am I migrating in silence or waiting until I'm noticed before moving? The Stoic advances not to impress, but to construct. And once it's built, there's nothing further to prove. Finally, master your emotions before they control you. Your mind is a realm, and emotions are its uninvited guests. They arrive without warning. Anger hammers on the door. Pride slips through the cracks. Anxiety lurks in the shadows. If you aren't vigilant, they transition from mere visitors to the rulers of your kingdom. They start making choices, directing your journey. Before you realize, you say things you regret, engage in behaviors that escape explanation, and find yourself wondering where you lost your grip. The Stoics never preached against feeling. They were deeply emotive. However, they refused to be governed by these feelings. Their discipline stemmed not from repression, but from self-governance. Epictetus taught that while external events may happen to you, your response defines everything. That razor-thin divide between stimuli and reaction is where true freedom resides. After all, emotions aren't the adversaries. Uncontrolled emotions can be perilous. Anger can morph into destruction. Fear can shift to paralysis. Yearning can lead to distractions. If left unchecked, emotions can hijack your values, leading you to act against your intentions. Consider how many positive aspirations fade due to emotional responses. You aim to respond with patience, but your pride reacts first. You plan to maintain discipline, yet anxiety leads you astray. You wish to forgive, but in the moment, resentment seemed more compelling. That's not weakness. It's a failure of your emotional strategy. So how do the Stoics approach this? Feel everything, but comply with nothing. Allow emotions to surface. Observe them. Examine them. Don't rush to push them aside, but also don't let them take the reins. Let them ignite without permitting them to scorch your future. The Stoic doesn't suppress their emotions. They embrace them, harnessing the power they hold. It begins with cultivating awareness. As soon as you feel a trigger, pause and breathe. Ask yourself, what aspect of me feels threatened right now? My ego or my essence? You might find that many of your emotional responses stem from unexamined fears masquerading as truth. From there, redirect, not forcefully but with discipline. Anger can translate into clarity. Fear can turn into preparation. Sadness can evolve into depth, but only if you seize control before your emotions do. Practically, this means journaling when your thoughts feel chaotic, moving your body to release trapped feelings, speaking less when emotions are intense, creating grounding rituals such as morning routines, taking calming walks, and finding stillness after conflicts. These are not luxuries. They are tools, shields, and anchors. Because the moment your emotions command you, they define your existence. Conversely, once you gain mastery over them, you define yourself. So consider which emotions tend to commandeer your actions and what it looks like to process them without feeding them further. The Stoic does not flee from emotion. They rise above it with awareness, patience, and self-control. The objective isn't numbness. It's maintaining control over your direction, regardless of who seizes the wheel. Finally, adopt a no-complaints policy. Only make adjustments. Complaining can be alluring. It creates a temporary sense of power, the illusion of taking a stand, as if enlightening others on injustices. Yet in reality, most complaining signifies weakness. It's a drain of energy and abandonment of power. While you're complaining, nothing changes. You don't grow stronger or smarter. You merely stagnate. The Stoics had no tolerance for complaining, not because they didn't experience suffering, which they did profoundly, but because they understood that suffering doesn't grant you permission to relinquish agency. Seneca wrote, A man is as unhappy as he has convinced himself he is. That's the quiet truth behind the bulk of complaints. They aren't necessarily about circumstances. They're about your choice to focus on them rather than on solutions. Being a Stoic means replacing complaints with adjustments. If something isn't working, that's informative. Shift your strategy. If something is challenging, that's even better, as it signifies resistance, which is where growth occurs. Did life toss you a curveball? Excellent. That's your chance to evolve. But none of this happens while you're lamenting about unfairness. To clarify, expressing frustration isn't inherently wrong. Venting can indeed be beneficial. However, remaining in a continuous state of complaint signifies spiritual decay, training your mind to concentrate on what's missing rather than on what could be improved. It fosters passivity and helplessness, making you a mere character in your own narrative instead of the author. Consider how many moments you've squandered in complaining about the weather, traffic, social media algorithms, lack of support, or excessive noise. None of these complaints advance your life. None build skills, hone clarity, or strengthen character. They merely consume space that should have been filled with action. Now think of someone you admire, someone who seems composed under pressure, focused, and purposeful. It doesn't mean their journey has been easier. They simply understood early on that there's no power in whining. True power resides in taking action. This mindset can be cultivated. Start with the small annoyances. The moment you hear yourself complain, pause. Take a deep breath, then ask, what's one thing I can do right now to make an adjustment? Not to fix everything, but to shift focus and regain control. Repeat this process until your instinct transforms from reaction to action. This change, from complaint to adjustment, forms the foundation of Stoic resilience. It doesn't suggest passivity. It means confronting challenges with clarity instead of noise. So, reflect on what issues you repeatedly complain about yet have not changed. What energy are you squandering on noise that could instead fuel productive movement? Each complaint represents a lost opportunity. Each adjustment is another brick in the structure of your self-respect. Complain less. Adjust more swiftly. That's how you continue to advance. Even when a world around you attempts to slow your momentum, take ownership only of what lies within your control. There's a weight we each bear, yet much of it isn't ours to keep. We fret over others' perceptions. We try to amend problems beyond our reach. We internalize burdens we haven't caused, cannot modify, and we're never accountable for. Little by little, that burden weighs us down, not because life is inherently heavy, but because we're carrying what never belonged to us. The Stoics clearly differentiated between what's within our control and what isn't. For them, true peace, real, grounded, resilient peace, could only be found on the side of that divide where you can steer your thoughts, actions, words, and attitudes. That's your territory. Everything else, the weather, the opinions of others, the economy, the past, doesn't fall under your jurisdiction. Epictetus succinctly stated, some matters are our responsibility and others are not. This realization can set you free if you possess the discipline to live by it. Reflect on how often your stress arises from circumstances beyond your influence. A delay, a critique, a rejection. You react as if your reaction will amend things, as if carrying the burden will resolve it. But it doesn't. Instead, it robs you of clarity. It clouds your judgment. And perhaps worst of all, it distracts you from the space where your true power resides. Your response. Living as a Stoic involves constantly examining whether something is yours to bear. If it is, embrace it wholeheartedly. No excuses, no evasion, just complete accountability. If it's not yours, release it. Not due to indifference, but because it doesn't belong in your hands. This mindset is radical in its simplicity. Are you anxious about how someone views you? Ask, did I act with integrity? If yes, let it be. Are you frustrated by certain circumstances? Ask, what can I influence? Focus solely on that. The remaining factors, just irrelevant noise. Do you feel disheartened by how things unfolded? Ask, did I give my best with the knowledge I had at that time? learn, adjust, and proceed. This isn't apathy, it's clarity. And clarity brings freedom. When you assume responsibility only for what's yours, your efforts, principles, words, your life simplifies, the mental clutter fades. You cease being a prisoner to the moods and decisions of others. You stop responding impulsively. You commence making conscious choices about how to present yourself, how to progress, and how to navigate your own life. And that, right there, is genuine freedom, not controlling the world around you, but refusing to let the world control you. So consider, what burdens am I currently carrying that don't belong to me? What might my day feel like if I focus solely on what's within my grasp while releasing the rest? For true freedom doesn't commence with acquiring control. It begins the moment you release the need for it and take complete ownership of what is already yours. Close the door to distractions, grasp your responsibilities, and forge ahead, lighter, sharper, and stronger. Finally, live as if no one is watching, because truthfully, they probably aren't. You assume they are scrutinizing your every mistake, your progress, your transformation. Yet the genuine reality is that most people are too preoccupied focusing on their own lives, concerns, and narratives. Once you recognize this, the liberation of feeling invisible is profound. You stop performing and start authentically living. The Stoics chose to live as though the world were silent, aware that the only judgment that truly mattered was from within. Since morality, discipline, and purpose aren't for display, they provide direction. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to remain indifferent to what lacks significance. The gaze of others, their fleeting approval or occasional judgments, holds no weight for a soul that knows itself. Yet many still behave as if an invisible camera were ever present. They hesitate to take risks, fearing external scrutiny, adapting themselves to fit in, even at the expense of their core. They stifle their growth to avoid making others uncomfortable. Unknowingly, they transform into a version shaped not by authenticity, but by performance. This is the trap. When you operate under the belief that others are relentlessly observing, you live to be understood, over-explaining, over-adjusting, and over-analyzing your actions. But when you recognize the truth, that most eyes are directed inside rather than outward, you can finally unburden yourself. You reclaim the freedom to grow imperfectly, to stumble liberally, and to rise without the need for witnesses. Living as if no one is watching doesn't equate to recklessness. Instead, it signifies living with integrity, acting rightly not to earn applause, but because it aligns with your values. Selecting discipline not for appearances, but for what feels true. Most importantly, constructing a life that resonates with you, regardless of others' understanding. Let's be honest, this world is chaotic. It endeavors to draw you into comparison, performance, and unending cycles of seeking validation. But the Stoic disrupts this cycle with a singular decision. I will live for truth, not attention. So what does living for truth entail? You follow your morning routine regardless of its visibility. You fulfill commitments to yourself, even when no one checks in. You speak less. You react less. You move with intentionality, not to impress, but to align. For that embodies genuine power, integrity without an audience, peace without permission, motion without marketing. Ask yourself, how would I approach my life differently if I believed no one were watching? What choices have I hesitated to make due to the fear of misunderstanding? Once you release the imagined audience, you stop living for approval and start navigating life with presence. No performance, no pretense, just practice, just presence, just you becoming. True power operates silently. It doesn't yearn for applause, approval, or permission. It flows quietly. It develops in solitude. It rises without announcement. This is the Stoic philosophy, not to garner attention, but to embody strength, not to impress, but to be authentic. In a world captivated by noise, performance, and visibility, that internal strength is both rare and unstoppable. These 12 principles go beyond mere ideas. They serve as anchors. They function as tools to reclaim your energy from public scrutiny, to establish a life rooted in action rather than announcements, to let your results resonate as you remain anchored in your endeavors, vision, and silence. The moment you stop performing is the moment you start truly progressing. The moment you cease explaining is when you begin to become. And the moment you let go of the need to be observed is when you acquire genuine freedom. So, here's your call to action. Protect your focus. Withdraw your energy from distraction. Return to your rhythm, your principles, your path. Live as if no one is watching, not because they're not, but because it no longer holds significance. If this message resonated with something profound yet quiet within you, share it with someone ready to rise in silence. And if you're walking this path with calm purpose rather than fanfare, know you're not alone. Continue building. Continue showing up. Let the world wonder about the source of your strength. It sprouts from within,